Step into the arena of minds. On this channel, every move is a clash of strategy, every sacrifice a turning point, and every game a battle for glory. Watch two players push the limits of creativity and calculation as we bring you the drama, suspense, and excitement of chess like never before. Sadorra opens with e4, pushing his central pawn boldly to claim early space and ignite the battlefield with confident intent. Wesley So replies with e6, raising the solid French shield while preparing a durable structure aimed at countering White's ambitious center. Sadorra advances d4, expanding central control aggressively and signaling readiness for a complex strategic fight across wide-open terrain. Wesley answers with d5, challenging White's center directly and inviting tense structural battles that will shape the upcoming Midgame. Sadorra develops nc3, increasing pressure on d5 and preparing potential kingside expansion as the strategic clouds begin gathering. Wesley plays nf6, challenging White's center and adding dynamic tension that hints at future tactical sparks surrounding e4. Sadorra strikes forward with f5, chasing Wesley's knight back while claiming space and establishing a powerful restrictive pawn wedge. Wesley retreats nf7, rerouting the knight to sturdier ground and reinforcing the classic French defensive setup against Sadorra's expansion. Sadorra pushes forward, adding aggressive support to e5 while preparing kingside pressure that threatens to unbalance Wesley's formation. Wesley counters with c5, launching central counterplay, aimed at undermining d4 and loosening White's grip on the initiative. Sadorra develops nf3, bringing another fighter toward the center and reinforcing key squares against Black's growing counterthrust. Wesley plays n6, tightening pressure on d4 and building the coordinated force required to challenge White's ambitious pawn chain. Sadorra places b3, calmly improving development while preparing to support central structure and potential kingside escalation. Wesley answers with b7, completing harmonious development and hinting at imminent castling to secure the monarch behind strong defenses. Sadorra aligns qd2, connecting rooks and telegraphing long castling possibilities that could ignite sharp opposite-side attacks. Wesley castles kingside, tucking his king safely as he prepares to unleash heavy counterplay towards Sadorra's soon-to-be-exposed monarch. Sadorra captures dxi5, grabbing material and opening lines, challenging Wesley to justify his aggressive central pawn break. Wesley recaptures dxi5, restoring equilibrium while activating the bishop to slice across critical diagonals with renewed energy. Sadorra castles, long with 000, dramatically placing his king opposite Wesley's and signaling a storm of mutual assaults. Wesley plays k5, pressuring c3 and a3, while preparing a ferocious queenside advance aimed directly at Sadorra's monarch. Sadorra defends with a3, preventing knight incursions onto b4, and forming an early barrier against Wesley's advancing forces. Wesley repositions b7, regrouping quietly and maintaining flexible plans while waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sadorra shifts keybone, sliding into safety, reinforcing vital squares, and preparing the fortress needed against Wesley's coming barrage. Wesley places e8, mobilizing heavy artillery onto the open file and increasing pressure on White's vulnerable central formation. Sadorra jumps n4, challenging the center with renewed force, and seeking to disrupt Wesley's growing positional momentum. Wesley captures nx4, removing the invading knight and opening lines that enhance the activity of his central pieces. Sadorra recaptures boldest, centralizing the bishop while maintaining pressure and keeping coordination across critical diagonals. Wesley retreats and bites, a flexible maneuver aiming to reroute the knight toward more active squares supporting queenside assault. Sadorra plays bf2, stabilizing the bishop and connecting his pieces while preparing long-term kingside counterplay possibilities. Wesley jumps back to end cheeks, restoring pressure on central squares and signaling readiness to intensify the queenside initiative. Sadorra places iyong, consolidating defenses while quietly preparing tactical resources to counter Wesley's advancing forces. Wesley plays rebate, positioning the rook aggressively on the file, likely to open against Sadorra's long-castled king, Pat-Tau. Sadorra leaps nb5, targeting sensitive dark squares and creating tactical threats that force Wesley to respond accurately. Wesley captures iyong, exchanging queens decisively and driving the game into a sharper, more concrete middle game landscape. Sadorra recaptures iyong, restoring balance while activating a central rook that now eyes important avenues of counterplay. Wesley pushes a6, driving away the knight on b5, while gaining valuable queenside space for future attacking operations. Sadorra retreats nb4, repositioning the knight centrally and trying to keep control over the increasingly volatile battlefield. Wesley captures nx4, simplifying the position while opening lines to enhance pressure on Sadorra's weakened defensive structure. Sadorra recaptures bxdx4, activating his bishop anew and maintaining central influence despite Wesley's growing piece activity. Wesley develops bd7, completing coordination and preparing his forces for a decisive queenside breakthrough against Sadorra's king. Sadorra plays key3, strengthening his center and building a defensive wall to brace against Wesley's increasing queenside pressure. Wesley responds with bp5, placing the bishop on an active diagonal that challenges White's structure and intensifies positional discomfort immediately. Sadorra captures bxb5, removing the intrusive bishop and attempting to reduce the mounting tension, threatening his long-castled king. Wesley recaptures axb5, opening the a-file brutally and preparing his heavy pieces to swarm towards Sadorra's increasingly exposed monarch. Sadorra brings r4, coordinating rooks and attempting to fortify central lines before the incoming storm fully crashes onto his defenses. Wesley plays rd8, stacking rooks menacingly and preparing to explode through central or queenside files with frightening precision and pressure. Sadorra activates iyong, positioning his rook defensively in hopes of intercepting Wesley's growing threats against multiple structural weaknesses. Wesley places rate, lining up heavy artillery directly across from White's king and signaling a powerful breakthrough is rapidly approaching. Sadorra advances 5, trying to distract Wesley with kingside counterplay and create complications that might slow Black's crushing initiative. Wesley responds with bc5, calmly developing pressure and eyeing tactical ideas that exploit weaknesses created by Sadorra's ambitious pawn push. Sadorra captures bx5, eliminating a strong attacker and hoping to reduce Wesley's momentum before his position collapses completely. Wesley recaptures rxe, activating the rook sharply and tightening the siege with renewed force against Sadorra's strained defensive lines. Sadorra plays rd4, seeking counterplay by challenging open files and attempting to disrupt Wesley's increasingly synchronized coordination. Wesley captures x5, opening fresh pathways and seizing material as he tears deeper into the fragile structure shielding White's king. Sadorra responds res c5, reclaiming the pawn while trying to maintain tactical life within a position growing dangerously unstable. Wesley plays re8, centralizing the rook powerfully and readying decisive threats that could shatter White's struggling defensive formation. Sadorra moves kct2, slipping the king toward the center in hopes of finding safer ground amid Wesley's relentless pressure. Wesley pushes g6, strengthening his kingside, gaining useful luft, and preparing further pawn activity to clamp down additional weaknesses. Sadorra reinforces with rf6, aligning his rook for defense while searching for counter chances within Wesley's increasingly overwhelming initiative. Wesley captures rc5, removing a critical pawn and cementing a strategically winning position as Sadorra's structure begins collapsing. Sadorra plays rb6, probing for counterplay on the queen side and creating threats that might delay Wesley's advancing dominance. Wesley answers re7, calmly regrouping while preserving complete control, ready to remobilize for decisive operations at any moment. Sadorra advances b4, pushing for space and trying to fracture the queenside tension, constricting his long castle defensive bastion. Wesley responds with r6, centralizing the rook strongly and amplifying multi-point pressure across both wings with intimidating precision. Sadorra captures rx b5, grabbing material in desperation and hoping to spark counterplay before Wesley's initiative becomes overwhelming. Wesley recaptures rec7, restoring coordination and preparing domination of the 7th rank, tightening the net mercilessly around White. Sadorra plays kb2, repositioning his king toward relative safety while seeking to reorganize surviving pieces into a last stand. Wesley strikes with rx8c, destroying a vital defender and deepening penetration into White's position with ruthless, machine-like efficiency. Sadorra responds re3, attempting to shield weaknesses and maintain a tenuous defensive structure under Wesley's crushing pressure. Wesley captures xa3, simplifying decisively and transitioning into a winning endgame with superior activity and material advantage. Sadorra recaptures rbxd5, activating the rook aggressively in hopes of generating tactical threats before Black consolidates everything. Wesley plays re-ck3, invading further and coordinating both rooks to apply unbearable pressure on Sadorra's embattled king position. Sadorra shifts ref5, searching for counterplay along the 5th rank and attempting to disrupt Wesley's flawlessly coordinated invasion. Wesley advances a5, preparing a kingside pawn storm that adds yet another front to White's already impossible defensive burden. Sadorra plays re7, keeping activity alive and probing Wesley's formation for any weakness that might delay the inevitable collapse. Wesley pushes h4, driving the pawn forward to tear open kingside lines and create new threats against Sadorra's fading defenses. Sadorra moves rf2, reinforcing the back rank while scrambling to hold critical squares against Wesley's mounting tactical pressure. Wesley delivers rb3, forcing Sadorra's king further into exposed territory and tightening the noose with chilling accuracy. Sadorra steers cat2, retreating toward minimal shelter while enduring the relentless storm launched by Wesley's perfectly coordinated pieces. Wesley activates kg7, centralizing his king confidently and preparing to support his advancing pawns in a completely dominant position. Sadorra plays h3, pushing a pawn to create luft and attempt to slow Wesley's advancing kingside pawns and threats. Wesley responds G5, storming forward aggressively to pry open lines and increase pressure around Sadorra's exposed king on the queen side. Sadorra captures Rxb7, grabbing material and trying to complicate matters while Wesley's coordinated pieces still dominate the board dangerously. Wesley replies X3, sacrificing material to open files and deliver decisive checks that further expose Sadorra's king to mating nets. Sadorra retreats KB2, running toward relative shelter while desperately seeking any defensive resources to survive Wesley's crushing initiative. Wesley delivers Rep 3, doubling Rooks to force the White King into severe exposure and intensify tactical threats without mercy. Sadorra steps KCT2, attempting to escape checks and reorganize pieces, while the position increasingly favors Wesley's perfectly coordinated heavy pieces. Wesley plays Ratfun, a cold, precise check that drives White's king deeper into danger and prepares further tactical simplifications. Sadorra captures KXB3, taking material in desperation but leaving his king still perilously exposed to Wesley's remaining forces. Wesley responds RxF2, reclaiming material and restoring fatal coordination of rooks and pawns that now crush White's last defenses. Sadorra advances B5, pushing a passed pawn, hoping to distract Wesley and create a sliver of counterplay before final collapse. Wesley captures Rxgt2, eliminating a pawn and simplifying into a winning endgame, where his active pieces and king dominate all vital squares. Sadorra pushes B6, driving his pawn closer to promotion as a final spark of resistance amid Wesley's overwhelming superiority. Wesley plays Ragon, cutting off escape routes and positioning the rook to prevent any white counterplay or dangerous pawn promotions. Sadorra moves KCT2, bringing his king closer to the center to support the passer while clinging to faint defensive hopes. Wesley answers Rione, dominating key files and coordinating threats that lock down promotion squares and remove any remaining white chances. Sadorra posts R-7, attempting to generate nuisances and blockading ideas while desperately stalling Wesley's simple plan to convert. Wesley plays Re6, calmly consolidating control and preparing to eliminate White's passer while keeping all mating nets and tactics in place. Sadorra advances B7, pushing the pawn boldly to the verge of promotion and forcing Wesley to respond accurately to stop it. Wesley replies RB6, decisively stopping the passer and positioning his rook to control promotion squares and secure final domination. Sadorra moves KD3, activating the king to support pawns and attempt stubborn resistance despite Wesley's overwhelming material and positional superiority. Wesley pushes G4, smashing open the kingside structure further and creating unstoppable threats that will soon decide the game concretely. Sadorra captures HXD4, removing a pawn but opening lines around his king, which Wesley will exploit ruthlessly with precise technique. Wesley advances H3, driving the pawn deep to create mating nets and to push White's last shelter into total collapse. Sadorra plays RD5, trying one last tactical idea to create counterplay and harass Wesley's pieces before the inevitable conclusion. Wesley captures RxB7, eliminating the dangerous passer and simplifying into a clearly winning position where White's resources are exhausted completely. Sadorra brings R5, attempting to attack the advanced pawn and generate final complications, clinging to tiny chances amid mounting odds. Wesley answers RB6, parrying threats and consolidating every critical square, methodically removing White's remaining resistance with unerring precision. Sadorra pushes G5, creating last chaos and hoping to disturb Wesley's flawless technique, though practical chances are now essentially non-existent. Wesley concludes with rebate, sealing the position, stopping all counterplay, and confirming an inevitable victory as White's defenses finally collapse. That's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to bring you even more exciting chess games. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.